Hey everybody, welcome to Leading Thriving Cities. My name is Chad Wright. I'm the founder of Forward Partners. This is our new show where we want to shine a spotlight on leadership in public service. We want to have deep conversations about sustainability and how we build a thriving future for our cities. Today's guest is my good friend, Matt Davis. He is a lieutenant for the Arapaho County Sheriff's Office. We have such a great conversation. Here's what I'll tell you. If you're in law enforcement, you need to listen to this conversation. We're talking about vulnerability and how we wrestle with the things that really challenge y'all. But if you are not in law enforcement, I think it's even more important for you to watch it. I think you need to understand what they deal with in law enforcement and how we learn to process that and how we can learn to process it in healthy ways. He has such good insights in leading teams in an authentic way, showing up as his authentic self. And what did it take to get there? What were the tools that needed to be developed to actually move in that direction, to be a healthy leader? It's an incredible conversation, and I cannot wait for you to see it. So Matt, help us understand, you work for, how do you pronounce the county you're in?
Arapaho County Sheriff's Office.
Arapaho County. I wasn't going to try that because I was going to screw it up.
Yes.
So you work for the Sheriff's Office there as a lieutenant?
Yes.
And what's your role there specifically?
I am a shift supervisor or watch commander for 3 of the jail teams that we have.
Okay. So I know like in the police department world, anytime you promote, you go back to patrol. In the sheriff's world, is it you go back to the jail?
Yes, that's how it is at my agency.
Oh, okay. Is it like that at a lot of agencies?
It depends on what sheriff's office you're at.
Okay, gotcha.
But they want you to get that breadth of experience.
Yes.
To go back, and it's sort of, you go through the jail and then you work your way out to back to patrol.
This is going to be an interesting conversation because I think getting into what is leadership like in a jail setting? Is it different somehow? That's going to be really interesting to kind of dive into.
It is very different.
So help us understand this. We always start with the same 4 questions, but the first one, what's one thing you wish everyone understood about your role? So most people don't understand what we do for a living in public service. So as a leader in that environment, what do you wish people understood about that?
I think the real important thing, Chad, is for people to understand that we're there to, of course, take care of our employees that are there, the teammates that we have. Yep. But we also, on a daily basis, we might have up to 900 inmates there.
Oh, wow.
So we have a small city that we're dealing with on a daily basis.
And
so
there's a lot that comes to managing that, right?
And we have to manage all their cares and needs.
Yep. And
from medical to making sure that they can vote. Mm-hmm. All these different things, making sure that they have clean clothes, all that kind of stuff. So it's a different dynamic in the detentions area.
Well, and it's making sure they're taken care of in probably one of the hardest environments that exists, right? There's war zones and things like that, but in terms of in America, what we deal with, that's probably one of the hardest places to say, hey, we're going to care for a group of people. There's a lot of challenges in that, isn't there?
It is, and it depends on, how new your facility is or how old your facility is.
Yes.
So, if you build a facility in 1986 and you're there.
Yeah.
And then you have a brand new facility that might have been built in, in the last couple of years. It's a lot different.
Yeah. How
those facilities themselves work.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
What the setup you have now? What is it like? When was it built?
1986.
Okay, so you're in the 86 model.
Yes, we're in the 86 model.
I'm guessing it doesn't run as good as it used to.
It has
a little rust here and there.
Yes, it has some struggles, but we try to impart to both the people that work at the sheriff's office, but the people that come and do tours and stuff like that, that we're doing the very best we can.
Yeah.
And, I think it's eye-opening for people to come and do a tour and see what it's like in a jail. Part
of this, the whole reason we do this show is for people to kind of understand public service and really understand that we've been doing way too much with way too little in terms of resources.
Yes.
And to say, hey, we are doing the best we can. And I think that's true in so many cases. I'm curious, you kind of phrase this as we're caring for these people, or make sure 900 people have everything they need in a really tough environment. How do you keep your team focused on the idea, or do they have the idea and the mindset of, I'm here to serve and I'm here to care for, versus I'm here to I don't know what the opposite of that would be, probably not great.
Right.
Like, how do y'all navigate that?
On the 3 teams that I lead, it's basically we try to understand that we're part of something bigger than ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And really take on that and trying to build that high trust environment
Yeah.
And we're trying to, because even if they're people.
Yeah.
We just have a lot of people that we deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah.
We have a lot of teammates that we deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So just making sure that we're all going, understand that we're there for the greater good.
Yeah. That's interesting, because we can all often agree, okay, what is that greater good we're serving? But then the version of us that shows up that morning has a lot to do with how we serve that greater good, or whether we do or not.
Correct.
You're not just managing and hopefully influencing your team's mindset and attitude and how they approach things. You also then have the inmates there.
Right.
And managing them, because they've got their own fears and their own anxieties and challenges and things they've got to deal with.
And we're able to bring in different programs, different mental health professionals that help and things like that. I think the public doesn't quite understand the amount of people that are in some type of mental health issue that we deal with on a daily basis in a detention facility, and with people that are chemically dependent. That leads to mental health issues.
A lot of support.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Do you find people able to find the help they need? Like, do you see stories where some folks end up in y'all's care and they progress and they actually get the help they need to go back into society and do some good things?
Recently we had a former inmate that he came back and wants to pay back to the sheriff's office, and he's offering free. He's gone and he's in a doctoral program right now for counseling, has started his own business.
That's huge.
Came back, and he does group therapy for people for free.
That's amazing.
And he also has a situation where they'll actually, he'll help with housing on the outside, help people get a job, but there are a lot of people coming in, like, clergy, other things that come in and try to be a resource.
Yeah.
You can get your GED, because education is a big issue with people not being able, undereducated people not being able to get work, and people experiencing homelessness. That's a big problem in my area, in the Denver area.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of people that are experiencing homelessness.
Yeah. There's a lot that goes into that caring for that population and seeing to some those are pretty extreme needs in a lot of cases, right? It's not a simple thing to get them in a more positive direction. That takes a lot of work. One of the things, I've got this challenge coin here that you had sent me before. It's the Believe from Ted Lasso. And so you kind of use this as a framework. I know this was your 2024 coin.
Yes.
And so how do you use that Believe idea to kind of motivate your team and get them focused in the right direction?
So I flipped the script, Chad, where what I decided to do is, instead of having that first briefing of the year where myself and the sergeants sit down and tell the people what we expect of them, we flipped the script and used Believe as acronym to be able to share with them what they could expect of us as leaders.
I like that. How did they respond to that?
They've seemed to respond positively so far. The real measurables on that is, are people calling in sick? What's our overtime usage? Things like that. And those seem to be positive so far. We're taping this in May.
Yeah.
So, we're only a few months into the year.
Yeah.
But you do see a difference. You see a difference between our three teams and other teams.
So is that one of the ways y'all measure kind of leadership effectiveness, is how much people are using sick time and how much they're calling out?
That's the measurable that I've been using.
Okay.
And, just real simple, measurable, because that's a lot of times is you've got people that are paying or having to work a lot of hours.
Yeah.
Mandatory overtime, things like that.
Yep.
But if do they want to be at work, and are they happy when they're at work?
Yeah. Yeah. How much of the sick time is because we genuinely are sick or we genuinely need a break, and how much of it is I don't want to deal with my boss today? Like you can fix that. You can't fix the other side, but you can work on that.
Correct.
That's an interesting metric. I've never thought of using that before.
Yeah. So we're just taking real simple stuff, and that's just something I've been actively going back to school.
Yeah.
And for leadership. And I just wrote a paper on this, and I'm like, I'm going to try it. Let's try it out. Yeah.
It's interesting. Like, you're going on that journey of doing the work and being a student of leadership. And this was something I was talking to somebody about the other day, that it's not being a great leader is not about knowing everything. It's about being a student. It's about studying it and getting better and kind of building those muscles all the time.
Yes.
And I think it's kind of like getting in shape. Like you start to build certain muscles and then you work on different muscles. And so you're always moving forward, though. You never stop and go, great, I've checked all the boxes. I am the leader that I need to be.
Correct.
It's this never-ending journey, which I kind of like, actually. I like having something to do all the time.
It gets exciting.
Yes,
it gets really exciting.
Yeah.
Part of the other thing is part of that is also flipping the script. Is I met with every one of the employees.
Okay.
And I asked them 4 questions, and the questions were, what's your why? You know, I'm a big Simon Sinek fan from our chats before. That he's really a great author, and I love what he has to say about that stuff. And then I asked them to all define trust, give me their definition of trust.
Yeah.
It was
that
very
shows
interesting.
You how you can earn it, right?
Yeah. It gives me what their perspective is of where they are coming from.
Yeah.
That why, that trust.
Yep.
A lot of times I never got the same answer.
Yeah. That's fascinating,
Yes,
isn't it?
it is.
I did that with a retreat of about 10 people. We had 10 different definitions of trust. And it was really interesting how many of them also kind of tied back to childhood trauma. It was like, I experienced this, and now if you do this, I'm not going to trust you. It was really interesting seeing that correlation.
And really being able to what the word that kept coming up in there is authentic. Like if I really know someone, like if they have my back and they're willing to say, hey, you did something wrong, and be able to not just come at you.
Yes.
Like, hey, you're dumb.
Yeah. Can we talk about challenges and mistakes without it feeling like an attack? Right. And that's where you earn that trust piece before that ever happens, right? We skip the trust piece, though. Like, generally speaking, we go straight into just the things we've got to get done. Right. I love that you kind of laid that foundation. What was the 4th question?
The 3rd question is, what are your goals?
Okay. Yep.
Because that tells me a lot about a person.
Yeah.
Are they goal setting?
Yeah.
And then that 4th one is, how can I help you reach your goals?
Yeah. I like that. So as you had those meetings, you got how many people you're supervising?
About 50.
So that took a while to have those meetings.
Took about a month to get them all in.
Yeah, and even that's fast, man. You were just meeting nonstop for a month, weren't you?
I had a goal to get it done by the end of January.
Okay, gotcha. So through those, you brought in a ton of data, a ton of information about your people. Part of it was you earned trust and you earned just the connection there. What have you done with that? Like all that information, how do you then practically act on that? Or have you been able to, given everything else you'll have going on?
I just wanted, the initial thing is, I just want everybody to feel like they were seen.
Yeah.
They were seen and heard.
Yeah.
And have that active listening engagement with them.
Release a little bit of oxytocin, get everybody kind of bonded. Yeah.
How do you measure having cortisol or not having cortisol, right? Yeah. With employees, a lot of times that's body language.
Yes.
That's how they interact with you when you see them in the hall. Yep. That kind of thing. So it's hard to measure.
Yeah.
It's hard to quantify, to put down on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
What that looks like. So just being positive. Now I'm here in Texas doing this podcast, so I'm not there. I'm like out for 2 weeks doing conferences, but they're doing a great job.
Yeah.
And they're being very positive.
I'll be curious, as you're kind of going on this leadership journey, you're probably in the best kind of leadership shape you've probably ever been in your life, right? Do you kind of find like a pull back there, like I really kind of wish I was with them in the trenches kind of a thing? I
love being at work. I love being at work.
Yeah.
I love doing that, but I also love doing this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because leadership has really become my hobby.
Yeah.
Now, between school, between work, between getting to build relationships like I have with you and other leaders out there, I'm just so excited about getting the message out because there are more people that need to know that you can just be your authentic self. We always want to talk about EQ. Yeah. And I think authenticity is like EQ plus.
Yeah. Yeah. Being comfortable with who you are and showing up in a way to serve others it's wildly difficult. It is. Because we're all just wrapped in all these fears and this armor and this inability to be vulnerable. And it's funny, somebody asked me what I do the other day. I said I'm a leadership coach technically. I said, but oddly, I spend most of my time sitting in police departments around tables talking about fear and love. And they're like, that's an interesting job. I'm like, you have no idea. Like and it's never what I planned, but that is what we end up dealing with because no matter the context, whether I'm in a city manager's office, a police department, doing a podcast, whatever it is, we're all human beings, and we're all wrestling with the same things. We're all screwed up in very similar ways.
Yes.
It's just a different context that it's being applied in. And so it's a lot of talk about fear and love and vulnerability and how we learn to do that. It's very interesting.
There's a lot of that in law enforcement.
Yes.
There's a lot of just hold it in. There's a lot of talk about wellness now.
Yes.
And everybody wants to come in and talk about their wellness program.
Yeah.
And that's awesome.
Yeah.
Love the wellness program.
Step one is you got to have the program, right?
A lot of this is because of the steps I've taken to help my wellness.
Yes.
Absolutely. All the way around. Go to see a therapist, say I needed help, all those things, and stop that toxic relationship that I had with myself.
Yeah. Yeah. It's doing the work. And it's funny, when I think about law enforcement, I've always said out loud, like, I'm committed to the next few decades of doing this work. And so we got some time to figure some things out. And so when I think about the long history of law enforcement and where we're going, I see this as such early days in terms of wellness and how do we get on a much better track, because it's going to take so long to do. It's going to take so long, because I was in a group the other day. There's about 30 sergeants and lieutenants, and I'm looking around the room and I'm like, okay, I can see the people that are doing the work. I can see the people that are going to counseling. I can see the people that are going to therapy, that are have coaches, that are studying, that are learning, and I can see the ones that are not. And some of them are so far from that. I'm like, this is going to take time, and it may not even happen in a timeline that works for them. They may be out of this business before this industry ever gets there.
Right.
I feel like it's such early days, but I have such hope for what could be, that we can get to the place where we can, going in, like I actually working with the department on a new program for first-time officers. Like, let's get them before there's bad habits.
Right.
Let's teach them to lead themselves before it's all gone wrong and everything's a disaster,
My passion is to show people that they can effectively lead themselves.
Yes.
And give them some of those tools to lead themselves, to not have to get to the place that I got to, where I had to call for help. I was not suicidal,
right? But
I had to call a friend and say, my life is screwed up.
Yeah.
And then you have to go in that next day and you have to talk to your captain, your other co-workers, your lieutenant, and talk about, hey, I'm really messed up. And
when you did that, was there fear as you're doing it, like, oh, this is going to be the end of my career?
100%.
Yeah. Because that's the environment, right? Of if I express that there's something wrong with me, my career's done.
Correct.
Because we've been taught that that's weakness and there's something broken,
right,
that we would even need to do that.
Correct.
And yet everybody's running around needing to do that.
Really, it depends on what it is. Like, you get people that are chemically dependent, that are police officers, and in law enforcement, you get that happening. They're making poor choices. You know, they have a trail of broken relationships, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
They're telltale signs.
Yeah.
I was fine. I seemed fine.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be at work 20 hours a day because that was my safe place to be.
Yes.
Where everything else, when I would go home, I would be very angry and other things like that, where I was just, like, I wasn't expressing it. I was just an angry person and had a very toxic relationship. Things were very magnified up here between my ears.
Yeah.
Having that inner voice that really has such a, you're not a positive person to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, you're almost unable to be kind to yourself at all.
Oh, yeah.
And
no
that
empathy.
Kind of thing matters. This is where it's really interesting thinking through how we apply this in law enforcement, because, again, it's an industry and an environment and a context where that is never talked about. And so this is an interesting journey to be on. It kind of leads into the second question. What was one of the biggest internal challenges you had to overcome as you're kind of fighting with yourself to advance in your career? You've been in law enforcement how long?
13 years.
So over that 13 years, when did you hit that point where you were finally courageous enough to raise your hand and say, hey, I need help?
Just about 2.5 years ago.
Okay.
So
about a decade into the career, 11 years in?
My bucket was just getting full, pretty full with incidences.
Yeah.
And not like, I'm super lucky. I've not had to be in a situation where I've had to use lethal force on anyone or anything like that, or had really anything super bad done to me other than minor injuries from an incident. So you just think that everything is okay because you haven't been involved in one of these really critical incidences. Right. But really, when it starts unwinding, you sort of know it unwinds. And I think about the first or second time when I went to therapy before I really asked for help. I look back now and I go, oh, that therapist she was ready for me to come back. Like she knew I was coming back because the things I talked about after I asked for therapy versus when I just felt like I needed to go.
Yeah.
Were quite
Wildly different, weren't they?
Wildly different.
It's so funny you talk about, well, I haven't been in a shooting. I haven't really had anything terrible happen to me. And yet my guess is it is this accumulation of dealing with the, first of all, soaking in kind of the negativity of society, right? We talked about that earlier, just you and I, before we started this, soaking in the worst of what we are capable of humanity. And then you add to it that layer of the trauma of seeing things we as human beings shouldn't see.
Right.
In accidents and in murder and death and all the things that we're not designed to actually experience and process very easily.
Right.
And yet you see all that, and in your mind you're going, that's nothing. Nobody shot at me today.
Right.
And yet if anybody outside of law enforcement looked at that list, they would be like, holy hell, man.
Yes.
Of course you need help. This makes sense.
Correct. Correct. Ironically, I was at a conference just before in the last few days.
Yeah, the FBI LEDA conference.
Yes, the FBI LEDA conference, and I was talking to a younger police officer that had won Officer of the Year at his department, and he got to come on the trip.
Oh, nice.
So we're all sort of sitting around, and some of his teammates were there, and they started talking about, well, you don't want him to. He's only seen one dead body, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then it goes around the table, and it's like when you start adding up, when you see a lot of death, which we do, and for me, I always thought, oh, hey, it would be really cool to investigate homicides, investigate really complex crimes, human trafficking, all these things.
Yeah.
Well, what you're seeing is no one should see someone their grandmother's age or their mother's age being trafficked.
Right. Absolutely.
The conditions that they live in, the type of things, and they're just right out there. Like if you were looking, like there are plenty of people that weren't police officers that saw the conditions that people were living in, and they chose not to say anything. Look the other way, which
is somehow almost as dark as the people committing the crime.
Correct.
Right? Like it's evil in a different way.
Correct. And then but you get to those things where. There are many incidents that I can think of where, you respond to something and your friends are there and you're just hoping that they're okay.
How many times did you experience on a scene, everybody's looking at things they shouldn't see in life and they're doing their best to kind of push it down and let's pretend this doesn't bother me, and you would get the question, hey, are you good, man?
Oh.
Was the response always, I'm good?
I would say the first few years before the real push on wellness started, it was, you were all good.
Yeah, that was the expected response.
Right, you're all good.
Yeah.
Get to the next call for service. Yeah. Ironically, I had never seen someone that was deceased until I became a police officer.
Which is probably the case for a lot of officers, right?
Correct.
It's not often we're walking around and there's dead bodies laying around.
So my physical reset was, I was deathly afraid of throwing up on a scene. You don't want to have that happen.
Yeah,
like you don't want to be that guy.
Live that down.
Right, 100%. You don't want to. You don't want to live that down.
Most people outside of law enforcement don't understand it. It's a giant middle school.
It is,
and you're going to be known as Pukey after that, and that's what they're going to call you.
You're going to have all kinds of stuff on your locker. You're going to. It's that kind of thing. But I decided early on that I was going to go eat after.
Okay.
So that's a
hell of a coping technique.
Right. So that was just my thing. So
that's interesting.
Go to a dead body, hit the drive-through,
Yeah.
whatever. And I do that today.
If
I got called to do an investigation where there's a deceased person on scene.
How does that help you cope with that?
You know what? It's just sort of like, hey, it's a treat for me.
Yeah. It's like, okay, I got through a hard
thing. So let's get in and out, or McDonald's or whatever. Right.
You've trained your brain. It sees something traumatic. Let's go have something good.
Right. Correct.
Is there, okay, this is an odd question. Is there a specific, post-traumatic dead body viewing meal that you like?
No, there's not. There's not. There's not.
Okay, I was curious about that.
And I'm holding back telling a really horrible story about a hot dog, but I'm not going to do that.
Well, just from what we've talked about, I glanced over at John, and he's about to die, so I feel like we've probably already hit that line.
Okay. You can edit a bunch of that stuff
I always
out,
have
John.
to remember that everyone watching this is not in law enforcement and doesn't understand that
Correct.
world. So, part of this, learning how to navigate this, as you have started to learn to be more vulnerable, start to open up a little more and say, yeah, here's what I'm wrestling with and here's what I've been through. What is how have you seen people respond to that vulnerability?
People always ask, you seem fine. Like, you seem fine when I saw you. Like, I saw some friends at this conference that I had not seen in probably 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And they had either seen one of my other podcasts or had reached out to me or had heard through a mutual friend that that I had some struggles. And when they're like, man, I had no idea. Like, they come up to you and they're like, I had no idea
that
this was going on. And I go, yeah, I was fine on the outside. But it's when I went home. It's when I got by myself what the negative thoughts were. And I felt out of control in my life.
Yeah.
And so you go into that first therapy session and you do believe that they're going to, I thought for sure that maybe my career was over or I would just end up having to be off for a really long time.
Yeah.
Like fit for duty, something like that.
Yeah.
And my therapist, she goes, okay, why are you here? I explained to her, a lot of tears. I'm one of these guys that likes to cry. So there were a lot of boxes of tissues.
It's fairly good for us, whether we want to admit it or not.
But between all my blubbering, I looked at her at some point during that first or second meeting, and I said, am I crazy? And she goes, no, you're just experiencing life.
Yeah.
And she's I go to a place that just specializes in first responders.
Right.
And I would say anybody listening to this podcast that is struggling with things and they're a first responder, a fire department, EMS, police officer, sheriff's deputy, add on to whatever, go see someone that specifically gets it.
Yes.
Because you'll spend the first few meetings trying to understand that.
Yeah.
And it's very hard.
Because if you see somebody that doesn't get it, in the back of your mind, you're constantly going, are they going to reject me for what I'm saying? Have I crossed lines that I'm not aware of and they're going to push back on?
Correct.
Like, that's got to be challenging.
Uncomfortable.
So when she said, you're not crazy, you're just experiencing life.
Yes.
What did that do for you? How did that feel?
It felt a little relieving.
Yeah.
Like, it was a relief. She gave me some homework in the following sessions.
Yeah, therapists like homework.
Right. And one of the things, I don't know if it was actually the homework or just I was doing some homework and I found it, but I found a control circle.
Yeah. Which you brought with you.
I brought with me. And it was just very super interesting how this was the most freeing thing for me.
To be able to see, this is what I can actually affect, this is not.
Correct.
Okay.
I really struggled with my past and my future.
Neither of which you can directly control in the moment.
Correct.
Interesting.
Not at all. And then how other people perceive me.
Yeah.
I wanted people to perceive me a certain way, but I wasn't willing to take the risk to act that way to get that response, right?
Interesting. So unpack that for me.
Your authentic self, right?
Yeah.
Like we were talking about before.
Yeah.
And being able to, who I am today is who I've always been. But when I really struggled, I was trying to tap that down.
Cover that up.
Because maybe I felt like it was unacceptable or I wasn't going to get supported.
Yeah.
And, my other thing is I'm trying to live my most authentic self, and the people that want to be part of that journey will come into my life.
Yeah.
And want to be part of that.
Yeah.
And the control circle also sort of released it where there's no skeletons in the closet any longer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where it's really, and I've made plenty of mistakes, Chad. There's no doubt about that. And
you're in good company.
Right. and people could call me tomorrow and say, I really got a problem with you. Okay, great. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
I have a lot more tools to deal with it now than how I dealt with it before.
And using those tools, that's a practice, isn't it? Like it is, that's what I try to help people understand. Like even as a leadership coach, I spend all day using the tools that I give to other people to keep me on track.
Yes.
It is a never-ending practice to say, am I going to show up as healthy? Am I going to process things in a healthy way? Right. And I don't know that that's what people are looking for when they go to the self-help aisle in the bookstore. No. They're looking for the easy answers. They're looking for the instant weight loss. The how do you fix decades of trauma like this? And it just doesn't exist. It's daily work.
I remember going to get a leadership book and thinking, hey, I'm going to read this leadership book, and my leadership is going to change.
Yeah.
That book is not a microwave for my leadership journey. It's not a microwave meal for my journey.
Yes.
It's for me to take and be able to put in my realm, like put in my, and see what my intuition says how I can use it.
Well, if you think about it in terms of the metaphor of food, right, which clearly I'm a big fan of food. You said it's not a microwave for to instantly make it. It becomes one of those ingredients, though, that now I can use it combined with all the other things I'm learning and doing to make a good meal. Every day I'm going to get up, design the person that I'm going to show up as, and decide that. Yes. And it's made up of those ingredients. That's why you're never done, right? You're constantly working and growing. It's interesting how you encounter those people that are on that growth path. They just have a different energy. There's possibility, right? There's optimism. And I think the folks that land far on the other side are the ones that are not doing the work. They're not willing to show up and do that every day.
Well, they want to do it how they've always done it.
Yeah.
And as we were talking right now, just thinking that if we go back in the last few years, we had a major worldwide pandemic.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's got to change people's...
Yeah.
Change people. It has 100%. To change people. So we can't go back to the way we were leading people pre-COVID.
Here's one of my thoughts on COVID. I think it revealed how many bad habits we had.
I would agree.
It revealed as leaders the things we were doing that were not sustainable. And you talk about the Great Resignation. The Great Resignation is not about money. It's about, I got a 2-week break from my jackass boss. I don't ever want to go back to that guy.
Right.
I'm going somewhere else. So much of it revealed what are we not good at and how do we have to improve. And now we're being forced to learn new things. And not everybody's responding well to that, but hopefully a lot of people are. I find in the public space, I'm seeing a lot of this adjustment to what does the new reality look like.
Yes.
And it's a painful adjustment. I mean, we talk all the time, cops don't like two things. One, what the way things are, and two, change.
Correct.
And so
Correct.
I'm seeing a lot, especially with the new generation coming in and how to lead them. We're having a lot of conversations about that.
So that gets to where I found out about why is important to me.
Okay. Tell me.
So I went to a tactical training where tactical leadership training, and you think, why are we going to talk about that when we're talking about leadership?
Yeah.
And somebody raised their hand and they asked the question, hey, with all these new people, they're always asking me why, and we don't have time for that. I just need them to go to this door, or I need them to get this, like break down this door or go over to this hallway and, point their gun in that direction or this direction. And the military, the guy that was a retired military leader, he was in the special forces, and he goes, well, we just elongated our briefing to explain the why, because we don't have that conversation when we're hopping out of a helicopter, when we're on site of a critical incident. You don't want to have that conversation.
Yes.
So the resistance to understand, the resistance in law enforcement to continue it that way and make people not feel seen, not feel heard, not feel like that their why. Yeah. It's going to cause a lot of leaders a lot of pain, and it's going to cause them a lot of people because they will choose to go somewhere else. Yeah. And this is a problem all over the country right now.
Yes, it is. And it's to me, it's one of those potentially existential problems, because if it starts costing us enough people, if the new generation comes in, says, I'm not down for this, the way y'all do it is nuts, and they leave, who's going to come in behind them? And that becomes really, really challenging, especially as hard as it is to hire right now in this industry. It's really funny. I think as you're talking about this idea, it feels like if you're doing a good enough job with the why on the front end, then when we're really in the middle of something critical, we don't have to sit and explain it because we did a good job. And I have this conversation all the time where it feels like for the older generation, like it was beaten out of us.
Yes.
We definitely didn't ask why, and that started with our parents, basically. You don't question mom and dad.
Correct.
You don't ask why, but really the hard part is we're wired for why. We're wired with that question, do I matter? And when they say why, this is what I try to get supervisors to understand all the time. They're not challenging your authority. They're not saying, who are you to tell me to do something? They're saying, does this thing matter? Because if it matters, I matter. And we needed that too. We just kind of stopped asking because it hurt too much to ask.
Right. And I will tell you, when you encounter those type of supervisors, I always challenge them with, what's your why?
Yeah.
When was the last time you asked why?
Yeah.
And then that's where my sweet spot is. That's where I'm trying to get more and more people to ask their why.
Yeah.
And that's part of the control circle, right? I had a friend that he was struggling, looking for a new job, doing that kind of thing.
Yep.
And I showed him the control circle, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, that's great! I'm going to put it up on I'm going to make my own and put it up on my wall." I go to his office. If I drove you to his house today, he would have his control circle up there. Yeah. I've got another friend. She's got it on her desk.
Yeah.
I have this on my desk.
Yeah.
Up on my computer, that kind of thing. You can take if you're truly working by your control circle, you can take the emotion out of it. Because if someone's emoting, they're emoting that fear that you talked about earlier. Yes. And let's make it not a fearful area. The other thing that I installed with my supervisors were, we made a term where, are you open to feedback? We're going to ask one another, are you open to feedback?
Yeah.
And they have the freedom to say yes or no, or be like, hey, Chad, I'll be open for feedback tomorrow.
So is this peer-to-peer? Is this leader to employee? Like what's
both?
Both. Okay.
Just with our supervisory group.
How open are your leaders to being told by an employee below them, I'm not open for feedback today?
Well, we have not. We're just doing it.
Okay,
we're just doing it
just
as sergeants to lieutenants and sergeants to sergeants right now.
Even then, how open is a lieutenant to having a sergeant tell them, "I'm not open to your feedback today"?
I'd be okay with that.
Okay. What about your other lieutenants?
The other lieutenants, I couldn't speak for them. I couldn't speak for them.
That's a good answer.
I'm giving you the court. I'm giving you the
legal answer.
Yeah, I'll give you the court answer.
Legally defensible answer.
I sure hope they would.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Yeah.
And let's take the emotion out. Like, there's no reason for us to get in a room and scream at each other.
Well, and ultimately it is, and that's the way it's typically been done historically, right? I have feedback for you. You're doing something wrong. We're not going to sit and have a conversation about it. I'm going to tell you what you're going to do wrong. You're doing wrong, and you're going to correct it.
Right.
And that doesn't really work for us. Like, we're not wired for that transaction to go particularly well. And so I think it's interesting the work you're doing on the front end to try to build this trust and this teamwork, because if you know that I love you, you're far more likely to be open to my feedback because you know that it's coming from a place of love, not from anything else.
Right.
But we have to build that,
yes.
right? We have to build that environment where we know we care about each other. We are for each other's good. I love the idea of what are you for? We're against so many things, right?
Yes.
Everybody will tell you what they're against. But I am for you. I'm for the team. I'm for our thriving and flourishing. That's a whole different angle.
Correct.
That's going to be fun as you kind of build that out, because it sounds like you're kind of starting to build that. When did you start as a lieutenant in this role?
In this role, probably about a year and a little bit over a year right now.
Okay, so you're kind of a year into the journey.
Well, the journey of the Believe journey, just since the beginning of this year. This was sort of something that hatched its way out in December timeframe and rolled into this new team.
As you start rolling some of these things out, do you get some looks from people like, "What is this guy's nuts"?
Yes.
How do you handle that?
I just keep pushing forward.
Yeah.
I keep pushing forward because the thing is, I'm not married to this.
Right.
We can pivot.
Yeah.
What I won't go back on is I want to be the most positive person that I can be and my most authentic self, and I want everybody to know that I'm willing to help them.
Yeah. Have you seen that optimism spread?
I do, but I had the great honor of somebody coming in, one of the teammates, and they're like, "Hey, LT, saw your podcast. You have to keep doing what you're doing."
That made your day, didn't it?
It did, but totally unexpected.
Yeah.
type of thing.
Yeah.
I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this for the person that might be out there that's sitting in their patrol car, hopefully listening to this podcast or watching it, and they're wondering what they're going to do with their life.
Yeah.
And how do they want to be a leader? And I just want to say you can change yourself.
Yeah. So let's put yourself, because you have, by the way, the best transitions through these questions.
Oh, great.
Let's talk about question number 3, which is, what advice would you go back and give yourself before pursuing this career in public service, or even to somebody that's thinking about getting into the line of work you're in? What advice would you give them?
This is my second career. So I worked 15 years in the auto financial area.
Yeah.
And how I discovered law enforcement was through a Citizens Police Academy.
Okay.
So I went to Citizens Police Academy because I always wanted to drive a patrol car.
Did you grow up watching Chips?
I did.
I learned how to tell time from when Chips would come on. Oh. My mom said I couldn't even tell time, but I would come running inside exactly at that moment to go, Chips is on, Chips is on.
I have every season of Chips on DVD. I on my bucket list, there are a few people on my bucket list that any president I'll get a picture with.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Any, no matter if I voted for him or not.
Yeah.
And then Eric Estrada
Yeah.
is on there. Eric Estrada is on there. I need to get a picture of me and Eric Estrada.
We've got President George W. Bush, President Barack Obama, Eric Estrada.
Eric Estrada's on there. And then
Love it.
I was not able to get a picture with Marcus Luttrell, but he's on my list of people that I would like to have a picture with. Got to hear him yesterday. Got a signed book. That's great.
That's cool.
That's good there.
Yeah.
They're just certain people, but Eric Estrada's on there. I say that every time. But
I love that.
Maybe Don Johnson too, because I loved Miami Vice too, and it's still a relevant show.
Yeah.
So
that's funny.
Just having some of those, but yes, I was never a motor officer because I'm scared to death of motorcycles.
But boy, they look cool, man.
They do look
Cruising
cool.
down those California highways.
Oh yeah,
that's the best.
They look really cool. They look really cool, but yeah, I and every time I say that, somebody's like, "Oh yeah, my wife saw Eric Estrada at this thing and got a picture with her." I'm like, darn it.
Yeah.
I think he was at IACP a few years ago taking pictures with people, and I'm like,
have you tried stalking? Give that a shot.
No. I want it to happen organically.
Okay, not illegally.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha. That's probably
maybe he'll hear me on one of these podcasts and then want to meet up with me at a conference.
If anybody has any contacts with Eric Estrada, or for me, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, let us know.
The Rock would be good.
It'd be really interesting.
It would be a very interesting conversation. The Rock just said, I saw one of his things where he's like, I don't talk about money, love, or what I'm doing next.
Interesting.
And I thought that was interesting.
I like
for him to say.
I kind of like that. Like, especially the what I'm doing next.
Yes.
We like to talk about it. We don't really then follow through on it very well.
So to get back to your question, about
that was a great just rabbit hole. Though.
Correct. That was
anything
awesome.
involving Chips, I'm on board for.
Okay, good. Let's not do the call signs. Okay. So Citizens Academy. So I'm in the Citizens Academy. I go on a ride along, and it is. I'm like, somebody's going to pay me to solve problems for other people.
Yes.
And let me just go out here and have this amazing freedom.
Yeah.
So it took me, I think the first Citizens Academy I went to was in 2007, 2008 time frame. And then it took me till about 2010. I got laid off my job. That wonderful conversation of, hey, we're going to be doing away with your position.
Yep. Turns out away was a tough time for financial stuff. Yeah.
And then, so that was early 2010.
Gotcha.
When that got shut down. But the great thing is I was able to put in for the police academy, self-sponsored, started going back to college at that point.
So self-sponsored, didn't have a job already lined up.
Correct.
Okay.
Did not. One of the oldest people in my class.
Love that.
Yes. There was somebody older in his 50s in there. And so test with a bunch of agencies. I was able to get selected by the agency that I'm at right now, and been there ever since.
Yeah.
What I would tell myself back then is really I would have started right away on continuing with that education.
Not wait.
Not wait.
Yeah.
Not wait.
Yeah.
And I had amazing. I had a very short time on patrol before I got selected to be part of our impact team, which was a street crimes, vice crimes unit,
Yep.
where we got to work in plain clothes and unmarked cars and all that kind of stuff, and it was amazing. It was an amazing time. Really see the world much differently when you start doing a lot of surveillance. You see what people don't see,
Yeah.
or what people really do.
Yeah. Especially when they don't know they're being watched.
Correct.
That's when the truth comes out, isn't
Right.
it?
It is. And so with that, I would go back and tell myself to focus on the education, figure out my why a lot earlier.
Yeah. If you take the toolbox you have now in terms of leadership, knowledge and tools and abilities, and you put that in your hands 13 years ago, how would that have changed your career?
How would that change my life?
Yeah.
Is really the would be a different question. Would be the bigger
Yeah.
question. I would have not gone through as much. I would not have gone through as much mental anguish as I had, and just understanding. Like if I would have had this control circle back then, it would have made my life so much easier with raising my kids, with being married at that time.
Yep.
All those things would have made it easier. Not saying that I would want to go back and change what went on, because I'm very grateful in where my journey has brought me.
Yes.
And these life experiences, but really just come back and focus on being my authentic self. Like be the guy that that wants to say good morning to everyone at a conference, that wants to go around and shake everybody's hand. And
I'm going to a conference next week. Can I take you with me?
Sure.
And you can connect with
Love
everybody, and then we'll talk. 'Cause
That'd be great.
I hate doing that.
Right. I had
Terrible at it.
Two of my best friends were at this conference I was just at, and they probably think I'm crazy.
Well, next week I need your help, so I'll have you come back and we'll go navigate that together.
We'll get that going.
So our last question, part of why we're doing this show is we're trying to start a movement towards sustainability in public service. What we're doing now is not sustainable. We never have enough resources to really keep things functioning the way they need to. And I'm a firm believer that currently our society is resting on the back of a lot of really burned out people and some systems that are not as firm as they need to be. So from your perspective and in your role specifically, from what you see of cities and how we do public service right now, what's something we need to completely rethink to allow our workforces to really thrive in the future?
For policing and law enforcement, we need to let more people in to see what we do.
Interesting. So talk to me about that.
We need to we need to say yes more than we say no.
Okay.
For not just transparency point of view, but tours.
Yeah.
Tours of facilities, ride-alongs, different things like that.
Yeah.
And not just a lot of the things, and you'll see this at different agencies that you deal with. When we have an open house day, what's shown at the open house? Our armored vehicle.
Yeah.
Our all our SWAT people, our bomb stuff, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
What we don't highlight is what we're doing.
Yeah.
What we actually do.
Yeah. The real hard work of this.
The people that we have, and the there's a view that we're not very diverse as a profession.
Yeah.
And of the people that are on my team for this year, I have people that were born in Africa. I have people that were born in Italy. I have people that were just born wherever, and like many places. I've got people that are bilingual. I have a lot of female deputies.
Yeah.
Diversity. Like if they see us doing our jobs and see the type of empathy and compassion that we're giving on a daily basis, and seeing the working conditions, and understand that, hey, do you want to do this job where you're going to be taped 24/7 of your job on a body-worn camera? And not many people are signing up for that, Chad.
No, that's tough.
No one's signing up for that. Even doctors.
Yeah.
don't have that kind of scrutiny.
Yeah.
And we need to do better if we peel back the layers of the onion to give more transparency. And I understand, like, people are going to hear this in law enforcement and say, Matt is crazy. Because
I know how most officers feel when they get told, hey, you got to ride along today.
Right.
They're not excited about it.
They're not excited about it. I get that. But maybe there's something different. Like, let's innovate.
Yeah.
Let's have conversations with our stakeholders, which are our community.
Yeah.
And if we got them on board and built some trust, then I believe that the funding that we're so desperately needing, the employees that we're so desperately needing, will come.
Yeah. Because there's clarity that comes with that transparency, right? Everything in our society is so wildly complex and nuanced, but you see a news story that says, well, this police officer did this, so police are not good.
Right.
Well, it was such a complex situation. There's so much to these different situations.
Right.
But people don't want that. They want the black and white. Can I judge this quickly as good or bad?
Right.
Versus having people come in and see the complexity that y'all are dealing with, calls that you are really not in any way equipped to deal with. Right. You're dealing with calls that mental health professionals should be dealing with. You're wrestling with things that society has just kind of grouped into the police bucket and said, hey, go do this with not enough resources. Have fun.
Correct.
And by the way, when you screw up, we're going to come down really hard on you.
Right.
And I think the more they come in, though, the more they could see that.
Right.
That would be amazing.
And I'm not talking about showing them our tactics or anything like that.
Yeah.
But just showing that we're all human beings and we're doing what we're doing. I at the conference I was just at, they had a debrief on the Allen, Texas shooting, the mass shooting that happened a year ago at the mall. At the mall.
Yeah.
And they were showing the body-worn camera of that. And that officer that was the first one to respond to that, he's at the mall, and the body-worn camera starts with him talking to a mom and two kids and handing out stickers.
Yeah.
Handing out stickers to them saying, hey, boys, make sure you wear your seatbelt.
Yeah.
Hey, listen to your mom.
Yeah.
And then in the middle of that interaction, he hears gunshots.
Yeah.
And in the next few minutes is him grabbing his rifle and running as fast as he can.
A really long way, by the way.
Right.
I've watched that footage.
Yes, a really long way. Like, good for him.
Yeah, good. Dude, I was watching that footage going, I would have died halfway. That's crazy that he ran that far.
Running, having adrenaline just go, dumping, and then having to address that.
Yeah.
And then him having to address that threat.
Yeah.
Well, we can cut that all out and say, hey, cop showed up, cop pulled a gun, cop made the bad guy deceased. Okay, that's horrible.
Yeah.
But we don't see that, like, how many people are going to be in their job of going from customer service relations person to now, getting it, like, being an action hero.
Yeah.
How whatever does that. Whoever does that.
Yeah.
And I understand they want to try to legislate out violence of traffic stops, other these things like that. Politicians want to do that. We're not going to be able to do that because we can't legislate evil.
Yeah, you can't legislate other people's behavior necessarily.
Correct.
I think it's going to be interesting because you're right. There's a real wrestle here of the more transparent we are, the more people understand us, the more people will trust us. And the more people trust us, the less they're going to make quick judgments. But we're scared to be transparent. We're scared to let more people in. And so it's going to be one of those things. They're like, well, it's really dangerous to let people in. It seems to me it's more dangerous to not let them in.
I would agree with you.
Because if we don't, we're never going to build that trust. And it's Patrick Lencioni has the 5 dysfunctions of a team. And I love it because it's this beautiful pyramid. The very bottom is trust. That's the base. We don't spend time on that. We don't spend time building that. And so we just focus on results, right? That's the top of the pyramid. So you're essentially flipping the pyramid upside down, which is not stable at all.
Right.
It's kind of similar. If we don't build the trust with the public and make sure they trust that we are always going to do what we can, that we're going to do the best we can in every situation.
Right.
If we don't build that trust, then nothing's ever going to change.
Right.
And they're going to continue to not trust and continue to make quick judgments on really complex, really scary situations.
Right. And it's not like TV.
Yeah.
It's not like an episode of Hawaii Five-0 where we're going to roll out in our fancy cars, have a couple of shootouts, and then all meet at the bar at the end of the episode and laugh it up.
Yeah.
It's not like that. Like, I reflect on probably my hardest day in law enforcement was back in 2017 I'm on call. I get a call first thing in the morning on New Year's Eve, and it's get to this substation because there's been an officer killed in a very public shooting.
Yeah.
So go from that to I was a negotiator later that night. I get called out. I will always remember where I was on ringing in the new year, where I'm talking a veteran off a roof off a roof of his house.
Yeah.
That's trying to kill himself. You know, and then I go home, I go to sleep. I get another call of having to come out of a body found in a garage.
Yeah.
And I'm out investigating this every day. That sounds super glamorous to people.
Sounds exhausting.
Right. Just like, you know, but it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And it fills that bucket up, right?
Yeah.
You continue to fill that bucket up. And when you think about that, it would be for us to be more transparent.
Yeah.
And really understand, like, there's a different level of transparency. Like, my previous level of transparency would be like, hey, I'm a human garbage garbage man.
Yeah.
That's not really what we're doing.
Yeah.
We're dealing with people. We're not like the fire department. Ladies don't go running in the other room to get dressed up for us to show up.
Nobody's excited to see you show up.
Right. We're seeing people on the very worst day.
Yeah. That transparency, if we can start to build that out, I think that really does start to change things. It's part of why we're doing this show in the first place, is to help people understand public service. Beyond, we do law enforcement, we talk to city managers. We want people to really understand what makes this society work. And it's a lot of people who are committed to serve. And the more we can tell that story, I think the better it is for everybody. The more we can find the support, the resources, everything we need. I think you're spot on that idea of more transparency. That's incredible.
Yeah. I think I look at your organization and what you guys are doing, and if someone's bringing you guys in, it means they're sort of on that road, right? They're on that road to at least opening up the doors a little bit and showing and giving some resources that other places don't give. Because we can talk about wellness all we want, and we can talk about being, having community outreach and things like that. But if we're really not doing it, and we're not doing it at home, like, my big thing is you got to learn how to lead yourself.
Yes.
If you're not leading yourself, then there's no leading anybody.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the interesting thing. We just finished. John is fresh off of finishing editing the new version of our leadership course, and we called it the Leadership Foundation course. 90% of what we talk about is how you lead yourself. Because if that is not in place, you are not going to lead others well. You may manage them, you may guide them, but you're not leading them in a really healthy way. It is, the whole ball game is here. Are we leading ourselves?
Right.
That's the work. Man, this has been a phenomenal conversation. I appreciate you coming all the way from Denver, obviously not just for us, but it's nice that it all worked out this way. We'll have you on again in the future. I have a feeling we're going to have a lot to talk about as we go forward, man.
Let's hope so. I really appreciate your friendship and what your business is doing for people and your people here. So I really appreciate that, and thanks for having me on.
We're happy to serve. Thank you for joining us for Leading Thriving Cities. You might also like our other podcast, The Leader Lab. You can find it on all the major podcast platforms and on YouTube. Just search for The Leader Lab. Each episode is under 10 minutes. It's just a quick thought to help you level up your leadership. You'll also find all the other leadership content we are putting out on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Just search for @ForwardPartner.